Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gurinder Singh. I am the host of the Jmc Chronicles and this podcast that you are currently listening to. We are currently on episode 10. 10 episodes later, we are gotten to this episode, which is I would never have thought a couple years back that we would get to episode 10. Um, I mean, I didn't even think for the longest time we would get to episode one, but to get to episode 10 is very a truly special thing for me. And it also just goes to show like there's a sangha that is being made with this podcast, and it's just something that I'm so thankful for and so appreciative. All of our numbers and all of our platforms have been growing, so thank you so much for those who are listening and who is sharing. It really means a lot for us, because it helps us grow and reach out more people. But last episode we talked a little bit about social media and how specifically Twitter, and talking about how there is a lot of good and like networking involved in it, but there's always everything the bad of it, right? Twitter can be negative or it can be toxic. But if you guys haven't listened to that, it was an amazing episode. I was joined by Abhijit, who had a lot of amazing things to say about social media, just as much as I did. And one of the like points I made last episode towards the end, if anybody did, like missed out on it, was like these podcasts and these episodes allow our guests to get a platform that they might not get usually. So please be respectful, please be kind. We are just sharing, the guests are sharing their opinions as much as I'm sharing mine. um Without further ado, I'll turn into a little bit into this episode. This episode we're joined by two amazing young female leaders. It's amazing, or two Kaurs, sorry, who both have now just graduated from high school, and they'll be going on to their campuses. I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit more. Gurleen, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, of course. As Gurnder stated, I just graduated from high school. I was a part of SHSS since my freshman year in high school, which is when it was created, and that's when I got involved with Jakara. And then now that I've graduated, I'll be attending UCI as a first year bio major, and I plan on continuing a JMC there.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, my name is Amrit. I recently graduated from Silver Creek High School, and I will now be going to San Jose San Jose State University. As a freshman, I am studying poli-sci, and I am very excited to continue working on my campus with the Jakara movement chapter there.
Awesome. For those that don't know, I also went to Antelope High School. That is where Gurleen went to, and she's also already repping with the t-shirt she's wearing. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but so to see, like, as Gurleen mentioned, she joined as a freshman. At that time, I was a senior. So that's when we first started SHSS, not only at Antelope, but also at in Sacramento in general. So just to see like the next wave of leaders that came out of like that graduated from Antelope after me and after the class that we started with is just always it's a really good, and it's just we've met before, and it's just like it's always just amazing to catch up and listen to what you guys have been doing over the years. But something I want to kind of start off with, and something that is really like the aim of this episode, is to talk a little bit more about the event that you guys both, or the conference you guys both organized and put on during this pandemic time, which is like always, it's been hard for not only just for SHSS in general, but for also for us folks at JMC, and just in general the whole world, right? It's been a tough time trying to come up with new ways to connect with your community, new ways to do stuff, but yet not be able to see people in person, right? So for us, like for JMC and for me specifically, like creating this podcast was one of those ideas that I did, right? But I'll hand it over to either one of you guys who want to start first. Just let us know like what the conference, the name, what it was, like the whole plan of it, and like how did it come to be? How did you guys get this idea? Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, so I can start us off. So our conference is called Napulean Napulange, which means we haven't forgotten and we won't forget. A lot of our ideas, a lot of our goals actually revolved around the name. We felt like a lot of our youth, in general, in our experience, the youth that we've interacted with, the community spaces that we've been a part of, we felt like our narrative of 1984 and all the events that happened before it and after it was kind of being erased. The youth didn't understand, nor were they getting an in-depth analysis of what happened during that time. It was kind of just stuff that I could get from reading a couple articles after doing a Google search of what happened in 1984. So we wanted to create something that kind of reminded the youth that Sikh history is very rich. It is very much still affecting us to this day, and we wanted to create a safe space where the youth could come and ask all their questions and also learn and grow about just art history in general. And we specifically focused our conference around the events that took place in 1984. We kind of had a timeline of events. We started out in 1947 with the partition of India and Pakistan, and we kind of ended it off with the Kisan Morcha that's happening right now.
Yeah, it's just that's like really awesome, and I'll let you speak a little bit more about that, Gurleen. But like, it's really like it's awesome to see, and it's like it's like I say awesome in terms of like it's kind of actually sad to see like from 1947 to like this day, like the Kisan Morcha is still going on to this day. For those that don't know, it's still happening. It's just because it's not getting posted as much or you don't see it enough on your timeline enough. It's still happening. So if you do want to still like check into it and be an ally, it's definitely still going on. So don't think that like that has came and passed, because it hasn't. But it's just like to see like from 1947 to this day, like it's still like they're like these types of events are still happening. It's just like for me, like it makes me really just like step back and try to like take in of like just why, right? And I feel like that's something that like I'll speculate a little bit because I wasn't able to join, but like that's something that you guys kind of like maybe addressed in your guys' conference of just like why is it still continuing to this day? And Gurleen, if you want to talk a little bit more about the conference and just in terms of like what the aim in terms of like what you wanted out of it and like what you were trying to get out of it for yourself.
Yeah, I'll just go into like how I came to know about this. Like, Amma just randomly called me one day and she was like, "Hey, I have this idea about this conference series." And like, it honestly really resonated with me because I felt like we weren't raising enough awareness to our own youth, like high school students, college students, about what really happened. And I feel like a lot of us were forgetting our true roots and a lot of our history. So we just wanted to raise more awareness about that. And so, in the SHSS officers group chat, we just sent a message and we were like, this is the idea, this is what we plan on doing, making 4 conferences ranging from this time to that time. And we got a number of responses back. So we all joined Slack and yeah, that's how we put together a team. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to our whole team. Um, we have like Harleen from Silver Creek, Sehaj from Homestead, Gurleen and Simran from Bellflower High School. So this is like high schools in Sacramento, SoCal too, along with the Bay Area. And then also special shout out to Ragni, who was the Bay Area community organizer. Without her, like we wouldn't have gotten this far. And she honestly helped us so much. But yeah, that was kind of like the thought process behind like why we need to make a full conference series and why we need to start from 1947 to the present day, like contemporary Punjab. But yeah, that was how it originally started.
And it's just like again you talked about like from various high schools, right? And that's something that really resonated with me when we found like, so for those that don't kind of know, so we just had our JMC retreat for the 2021-2022 school year. There so a bunch of college students from all over, from ranging from community college all the way to UCs to CSUs. We all got together this past weekend. In past weekend, I think referencing this would be 2 weeks ago now, when if this episode goes live. But it was just a weekend of we got together and we just shared what things worked for us, what didn't work for us during COVID, what we're planning to do going forward, new things to learn to make our JMC experiences even better and make our JMCs better. But Mandeep had put you guys both on the spot a little bit, and made you guys talk about a little bit about like what the conference was and what you guys did, right? And from that, like when I heard about that, because I had seen it, but it was just like I didn't look much into it, but I also did see like when Ragni was like talking about it a couple times and posting about it. Like I saw like that was a really like it was a really amazing thing to see, right? But then on top of that, it's just like to see like you guys from various different high schools from all over the state, not just in some of the same area, like getting together and planning something this big is like that's like major props to you guys, right? Um, you guys both are again like are it's kind of hard for you guys to like get into that space a little bit of terms of like organizing because like in our community like Kaurs are not been able to give like the creative like freedom to do events like that especially, right? So for you guys to not only just be young but to also be Kaurs in that field, like this that's like it makes it even more just like meaningful and more amazing. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about you guys as speakers you guys had during this time. And if you guys want to talk about a couple workshops or talk about anything else that you guys that stood out for you guys when you guys were planning and when you guys were running it and attending it, feel free to talk about it in any aspect. But I just want to talk a little bit about like who were a couple of guests that you guys brought on. How'd you guys like come to like because I know you guys were like the driving force of like talking to these guests, talking to the speakers and like getting them on board. So just like a little bit talking about like how that whole experience went for you guys. Like why did the speakers that you guys get, like why those people stand out for you guys? Gurleen, if you want to kind of start a little bit and then Amrit, you can always chime in.
Yeah, I think it's great you mentioned how like gores aren't really mentioned in our community and like they aren't at the forefront of most of these movements. Because one of our goals while we were picking out speakers was to at least have one gore speaker who'll be able to speak on these topics. And like we were able to get one for almost every conference series, which was amazing. And another thing is like this conference was like ran by all females, which is also super empowering for all of us. And a lot of the speakers also mentioned to us that like it's amazing young gores are taking the initiative to start something like this. But on top of that, like contacting speakers, like if anyone is ever like interested in creating something like this, I would definitely recommend like reaching out to as many as you can, like definitely doing your research and doing as much like outreach as you can, and like maybe even building a team specifically for outreach, because that's what we did. You know, we had an email template and we had an outreach team that would specifically send emails out to these speakers and just wait for the responses. And that's honestly just how we got all these like wonderful speakers to come out and speak to us from all over the world, like, you know, the UK, Canada, the East Coast, even California speakers. So yeah, that was kind of our thought process.
One of the main struggles that we had in organizing the conference was definitely when it came to speakers. Like Gurleen mentioned, we wanted to make sure that the God's perspective and a God voice was present in every single conference. It was definitely hard to find a God that was either willing or that even had studied that topic to come and speak out for us. A lot of gods either never got back to our emails, we couldn't find any. It was definitely a struggle, but I am so glad that we were able to pull through and find at least one god for every single conference. And again, to the point that Gurleen made, when you are organizing something like this, it is very hard to get speakers. We reached out to over 50 people and only got responses back from like 11 and 12. So it was definitely a struggle. A lot of follow-up emails, a lot of like, pressuring people like, please set up a meeting with us. Like, we're willing to do whatever. But yeah, definitely one of our biggest struggles was just trying to get speakers, and especially speakers that were willing to speak with our other already confirmed speakers. That was an issue that we didn't think we would face. But we had a lot of speakers drop out because they were like, oh yeah, I don't want to speak next to the person that's also at this conference. So that was a struggle that we did not think, nor did we prepare for it. So that was also a very interesting experience to see so many influential speakers and community leaders just be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to speak next to this person for personal reasons, community reasons, whatever they may be. But yeah, that was definitely a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys like, again, for you guys especially to like be running and organizing something at like especially like, again, I preference it like you guys were in high school during this time, right? This was last year. So you guys were like in high school. You guys are high schoolers doing this stuff, right? Like when I was in high school, when I was a senior, we were doing such as does. That was like our biggest like event that we could plan and like get together. And that was like barely if we could like manage that, right? And then the fact that you guys would like were able to do this and like it's just like it's so like for me it's just so amazing to like just see and like be fond of, right? But I think you guys really did an amazing job, but like also like you guys made a great point of like if you guys want to if you're passionate about something, if you want to do something, you can't just like go at it with like minimum effort. Like if you want to go about it, you have to go, like you have to give it like your all, and you also can't be afraid of like getting rejected, because like that's like the biggest thing, right? For like some people just like they start saying like, oh, should we reach out to them? Oh, they're just gonna say no anyways, and then now you just like you don't even know, you're just like guessing, right? And like that's a struggle by itself, and I think you guys managed it from the sounds of it, managed it really well. And again, I just applaud and just sit back in awe, right? So if you guys want to kind of talk about in terms of like what each day was, a little bit of a breakdown of like what each day looked like in terms of like the topics that are like the things like said on each day, or like the topics said on each day, any workshops or anything that you guys did that stood out for you guys personally, but also like something that you guys were like when you guys were planning and organizing something that you guys wanted to like make sure that happened. Either one of you guys would start. I mean, Amrita, if you want to take this one first.
Yeah, so I can go over a little bit of the structure of our conferences and who our guest speakers were. So, our conference we had decided would take place from April to July every second Saturday at 12 o'clock. So, our first conference, we started from 1947 up to the 1970s. Our speakers were Dr. Iqtidar Jima from the United Nations, Dr. Itika Popoli from the 1947 archive, and Simranjit Singh from the Sikh Coalition. And they did a deep dive into the partition and specifically what that meant for the Punjabi Sikh community that was living in Punjab at that time, and also the other communities like the Muslim and Hindu communities that were living in northern Punjab at that time, and how it affected them and how it continues to affect the generations to this day. We talked and they showed us pictures about houses that people had put their entire livelihood into just preserving the people that used to live there because of how brutal and how bloody the partition was. It put a lot into perspective to see the fact that people that could never see their homes again, never got to visit their homelands again, never got to see the homes that they grew up in again. But it also kind of gave you a little bit of faith that the people that were forced into these homes, they decided to preserve the family's cultures, the family's traditions. They preserved their houses. Some of their stuff was like they never went into a room again because of how special it was to the other family. So it was also heartbreaking, but it was also very inspiring to see that, people are still very empathetic towards the people that lost their homes during that time. We also talked about British colonialism during that time and how the government, the Indian government and the British government kind of got together and they just drew the boundary between India and Pakistan without any regard for the people that were living there. And I think we all know how many lives were lost and how many families were broken during that time. Gurleen, if you want to talk a little bit more about what we went over the first conference.
Yeah, for sure. Like Amma was saying, they showed a lot of great images that really showed how much destruction the partition really did cause and how many lives and families were lost. And then I think Simranjit Singh, he showed us a chart that showed like the statistics of like the Sikh sacrifices in the independence struggles. And, it was showing how like in in terms of like getting in prison for life, like that was 81% of Sikhs. Just looking at those statistics really makes me angry, because it's like Sikhs were at the forefront out of because of a lot of these fights, and you know, they never got the recognition that they deserved. And then like Amu was saying, you know, a good question was asked, when do the British pay reparations? And I think like that's a great conversation starter um, for anybody. If you want to get more into it, start a conversation in your own home. um, you know, I think just like talking to your grandparents about that question or whatnot, like it can definitely help with healing. And it's a question that does need to get brought up in our own homes.
No, I think that I think that's a really good place to start, because a lot of people, like looking back, especially, right, they think that like 1984 was like a standstill event, like there was nothing before it, and not like it was just like 1984 happened, and that basically nothing led up to it, and like nothing after it happened. But it's like that's very much like that was like a very much of a like a climactic point, but because it had started for 1947. I can't do the math off the top of my head. I think it's 37 years, I believe. Don't I'm not good at quick math, but it's just like it just goes to show you like it was something that like there's a conversation to have. Like that's a whole conversation of its own, that to have about like how did we get to where, like how we got to a place where it happened to, like 1984 events occurred and all the other violence that happened, right? It's like there's a whole backstory to it. But like for me, like for personally, like my grandparents, they had to um they were forced out of their homes because of the partition, right? So they had to walk for about like hundreds and hundreds of miles. And it was like there was no like support given to them, right? It was just basically like if you made it, like you made it. If you didn't, that's like unfortunate for you. And it was just like so sad to see like so many innocent people having to like lose their life, but in like in a way like it's just so grueling and so like saddening, right? To like lose your family, to not see your family, that if you get separated, right? It's just so like when you like, especially I don't know like how it was at the conference, but for like me, when I hear these stories from my grandparents when they were talking about it, like it's just like those types of stories, like they really like hit like towards like at my heart, because it's just like I couldn't imagine like me having to give up everything that I have like here currently where I live, and having to walk hundreds of miles just because I was kicked out of my house, just because of conflicts that had nothing to do with me, right? And I think that's an amazing point to like the amazing place to start. Um but that sounded like what you guys' day one sounded like. So if you guys want to talk a little bit about like what the next couple days were, a little bit talking more about like what the next kind of things, like because 1947 was a start, like so what was like the next things that you guys talked about, what were like the next things you guys wanted to focus on, and go from there.
Yeah, so our second conference, the timeline was the 1970s to 1980s, and then the three speakers that we did have was Dr. Harpreet Singh from Harvard, Gurpreet Kaur from Sikh Research Institute, and then lastly, Shamsher Singh from Khalistan Center. And so this conference mainly revolved around the build up to the Battle of Amritsar, and like along with how the government played a role in all of that, along with the media. So one of the big takeaways I had from this conference, sorry, was how the media portrayed Sikhs. You know, I think in a lot of those articles they're calling Sikhs terrorists, and they're saying, you know, Satjanara Singh is the main reason that this genocide is happening, and they're just blaming Sikhs instead of the government and who was truly at fault. And that really stuck out to me, because like at that time in the 1980s, you know, we didn't realize how big of an impact media had, but those newspapers and those media articles, those created a lot of tension, and that's what caused a lot of the mobs to come out and start pulling Sikhs out of their homes and killing them, or like even raping women, going as far as that, killing children, you know. So that was just really that's what made me really emotional, because I didn't know it was that deep. And this conference really showed me that, you know, we're lucky to live in a time where life's different, and like back then it just shows you um, how much pain and suffering they went through because of something they weren't even the cause of.
Yeah. This conference also put in, for me especially, it put a lot into perspective in the way that, like you had mentioned, Grindelwald, that 1984 and the Battle of Amritsar was not an isolated event. The government was preparing for this a very long time before even Sanjana Singh Pinrawale became an influential community member. That was, you could say that using Sanjana Singh Pinrawale was kind of just a scapegoat to cover up what the government was actually trying to do during that time. Um, the way that they burned the Sikh reference library, we lost thousands of years of knowledge and history and just so much Gyani, right, that was lost in those books that were never given back to us or were just burned into ashes. We lost so many innocent lives that day. So again, that conference really hit home. It was a very emotional conference for sure. We talked a lot about what it was like during that time. We talked a lot about the effect that it even had on people that weren't at the complex during that time, even people that were out here in America or Canada or UK or wherever you were, and how it just kind of created like this, kind of just baffled everyone. Like nobody expected this. But then when you look into the history, you look over the timeline of events they gave us, it was very clear that the government was working up to something. And it was just like, you couldn't believe how something so, like, how can someone be so malicious as to kill thousands of innocent people? But yeah, this conference definitely put a lot into perspective, and it definitely showed me how much just like straight out lies were being perpetrated into the narrative around 1984. How much information was falsified and that was given to us, and we were like told to believe, but the entire time, just it was all just like the truth was just sitting right there. So it was just kind of like, it made you step back and think. It's like, oh my god, there's so much that I don't know. There's so much left to learn, so much pain and hurt that was caused that I never even knew about. So yeah, I think that was my biggest takeaway from the second conference.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, for me, for those who might have attended in 2019 now, I believe, we did have Jakara did have a Lalakar, which is our collegiate conference that we have. We have Nishan and we have Lalakar. Nishan is for high school students, and Lalakar is for collegiate students. But the 2019 Lalakar was based around like 1984, and that whole weekend was just so much, like, for me personally, it was like so much of a, like, an emotional, like, I don't want to say ride, but like an emotional, like, a weekend for me, because it's just like, even though like I wasn't there, or I was born way later, right? Just like the stories that we heard that weekend, and just a little bit of like it just that, even now, like, trying to like just look back on it and talk about it is like it's a bit hard and a little bit difficult for me personally as well, again, because it's like I said, it was just not like those who fought that were shaheed that day, like innocent women and little bache kids. They were also shaheed that day, and not just that day, but leading up to that 1984 and all those days, right? Because the 1984, like we say, like 1984 is a whole overview year, but it was like it's not just one day as well. It was a whole sequence of events, a whole sequence of days that like that whole event transpired. And so it just, for me, like, again, just like for you guys to like bring these topics and like talk about these topics, like it's something that we need, especially in our space, because I feel like it's a lot of it's just being like swept under the rug. So again, I just want to again say thank you for everything you guys did, and like holding that. But I do want to move on to a little bit like the third and fourth day a little bit. I see that from the kind of the notes that you guys shared with me, that the third and fourth day, the third is usually a little bit about like the 1990s and a little bit past 1984, like the events that happened after 1984 in that year. Um, for reference, it wasn't the year after that stuff started happening. No, no, no. It was the next week, the next day after the events of June, because that's when the attack on Amritsar happened, Harmandir Sahib happened, is just like, that's from that day on, like it was an instant repercussion of all these events that you guys can talk a little bit more about. But just talking about a little bit about like your guys' day 3 and talking a little bit about your guys' day 4, with that relating into like what's happening right now in India and in Punjab right now. If you guys want to talk about that, I just know, like for me again, like I know like a couple of these things because again we had our Lagar about this, but like a lot of folks don't know about this, right? And it's just like, if we don't talk about it, then who is, right? And so that's why I'm just like so happy that you guys were able to organize and run this event. But if you guys want to talk a little bit about your guys' 3rd and 4th day, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned how like this is a good, like our main goal with this conference series was to create a space where people can leave their comments and leave their questions. And I'm glad you mentioned like how eye-opening this was for some people and how emotional it made them, because our point wasn't to make them emotional, but it was to raise awareness. And I feel like that's exactly what this conference series did. And then in terms of the 3rd conference, this one was really emotional for me because we had 2 speakers, Maninder Singh from Khalistan Center and Bachinder Singh from Insaf. And Bachinder Singh, he showed the Insaf page. And for those of you who haven't been on it, it shows like all of the shaheeds, ranging from all different ages, you know, our Bazurg and then even children. So it made me really emotional because I saw young boys, young shaheeds as young as the age of 8 disappearing and, you know, getting murdered. And I think like that's what this conference really focused on, was like the aftermath of everything that happened, um the inappropriate media portrayals of what happened in Amritsar. You know, a lot of that was the reason why um you know, all we lost so many lives, so many shaheeds got picked up and taken from their own homes, and so many moms still continue to cry for their children. And that's what really hits home, because these women are still crying for their sons to come back. And like, you know, the government, they're not owning up to anything that they did. So that's what really hit me hard this conference, on the 3rd conference.
Um, uh, uh, Going really quickly back to Grindelwald's point, another goal of this conference uh, was to take control of our narrative. We wanted to make sure that the stories of Sikhs and Punjab was being told by people who are from Sikh, who are Sikh, and people who are from Punjab, and not being told by, you know, a government entity or some kind of institution. So we really want to take control of our narrative and tell the stories that we never got to tell before. But a little bit more back into the 3rd conference, we, along with all the work that Insaf did and talking about the children shaheeds and all the people that we lost, we also talked about the way that doesn't matter in what point you look in Sikh history, there was always resistance that we had to fight back, and that still hasn't changed to this day. When you look at the timeline, you know, we were in the early days, we were fighting against the Mughal Empire, and then you get British colonialization, and then you get the Indian government, and now we're still fighting the Indian government and capitalism and like multinational corporations that are trying to take our land away from us. We talked a lot about that. And we also talked about, like you had said, the events that happened directly after the Battle of Amritsar. Like you have the Operation of Black Thunder, every other attack that happened on the other Gurdwaras surrounding all over Punjab, right? We talked about what the community did directly after 1984, the declaration of Khalistan. We talked about the Kaurs, we talked about the uprising of the Khalistani movement. And on the point of the Khalistani movement, we also talked about what Sikh liberation means, what it means to us, what it means to the community, and kind of navigating what, you know, liberation would look like and what that kind of future is. And we made a point that was really transparent, that was actually made by our troll, the only troll we got the entire conference, who had said that, you know, if there's a Khalistan, I will be at the embassy protesting it. And our speaker's response to that was that if Khalistan is doing something wrong, if the government that the Sikhs have created for themselves is doing something wrong, it's not transparent, it is also our duty to go up there and protest alongside you and be like, you know what, okay, so we fought a very long and hard fight to get where we are. And if you are not doing something correctly, and if you are doing something that goes against our morals and our ideals, we are going to be there right next to you protesting the government and how important transparency is in almost any liberation movement. But that conference was by far, if I do say so myself, it was my favorite conference. We talked so much about so many other topics. That conference could have gone on for days. But yeah, and also, quick point before I mention and we move on to the fourth conference, all of these recordings are available in our resource drive. I can't give you all the link, but I can spell it out for you guys. So the link is tinyurl.com/NBNB resources. If you did want to check that out, we have amazing resources there. We have all of the presentations and we have all of the recordings of the 4 conferences.
Yeah. So I'll get that URL from you if that's fine, and I'll put in the description of our YouTube video. So if you are watching us on YouTube, you can just click the description, and the link that Amrit just said will be there, and you can click on that and check it out for yourself. I just want to preference before I keep going that we are on Zoom. So even though like the world is getting out of Zoom and we are getting more in person, even with COVID, with the new variant and stuff like that. There's always technical issues that occur. I'm pretty sure everybody that's dealt with Zoom or has been on Zoom knows this. So anytime if any of our cams do freeze, please bear with us. Again, it's just Zoom and recording. It puts a lot of toll on our internets. So please bear that in mind. Amrit, your camera did freeze again, so that's why I'm preferring this. If you want to turn it off and turn it back on and try it again, but again, please just especially with me, I've said this from the beginning in the first episode that I'm no expert on podcasts. I'm not no expert with tech. I'm not no expert with videos. So if I do make mistakes, I do wholeheartedly apologize. It's never meant to be a mistake, right? I don't make these mistakes on purpose, but please bear with us, right? But also the other point I want to make before we do move on is just like if you do have any, like, these opinions again are what we say here, and what this platform is just to give platforms for anybody to speak. I'm more than happy to have anybody come on this podcast and speak about what they want to speak about, right? But just please, I preference this in the last one again. Let's just keep like negative comments and hate away. Like there's a way to go about, if you want to have a discussion or you want to have a talk about stuff, there's a way to go about that instead of just calling people stupid or calling people names. So please just keep that in mind when you are trying to talk back or rebuttal, right? But with that, I'm gonna go a little bit into you guys' fourth and last conference of the overall event in the overall conference. And this one is kind of to think about, like we've shortly just talked about from 1947 all the way up to the 1990s, early 2000s, to now we're going to be talking about stuff that happens to this day. And I know Amrit, you already preferenced this a little bit, and also those that don't know, we did do an episode about the farmers protest, the Kisan Morcha. That is episode 3, so that is also in the description if you want to go check that out. There is a whole episode on that. We were joined by 2 amazing guests that day as well. But if you guys want to talk a little bit about it, Gurleen, if you want to start about what day 4 was, what the 4th conference was about, and how you guys went about it, and like the guests and the conversations that you had that day.
Yeah, our conference 4 it was our most recent one in July, and the 3 speakers we had for this one was Dr. Navyu Gill from William Patterson University, Harleen Kaur from UCLA, and Manpreet Kaur from Art of Citizenry. And then so this one mainly focused on contemporary Punjab, and basically I really like the discussion we had at the end of this, because a lot of individuals were asking how the youth can help Punjab now, how we from sitting from America can directly help Punjab and what we can do. And so we definitely talked about the farmers' protest. But another thing we talked about that really hit me was the systematic infiltration of drugs, because I personally know someone in Punjab who has been affected by this. And it's a serious thing because it's taking out so much of our youth. And these speakers definitely did mention it, how like serious this problem is and how much recognition it needs, and how the government needs to focus on how this is a serious problem and how drugs are taking out the youth of Punjab. And then on top of that, you know, Punjab is known for their five rivers, and um, we all know like the water crisis that's happening right now. Like we definitely needed to address that, and that's something the speakers also addressed in that conference, which was super helpful, because then it gave us an idea of where we can help our community back home, where they do need the most help right now, how we can help with the farmers protest, the drugs, the water crisis, even like the censoring of the Punjabi language. It was definitely such an insightful conference. And if anyone has the free time, definitely check it out and see what you can do for your own community back home.
A couple other points on that we talked about. I think something that resonated the most with me was our relationship to Punjab and our home country and how that changed. We talked about how a lot of the times when we go back and we visit Punjab, it is so centered on the sense of self. We center it on, going to the bazaar and getting, all the suits and all the jewelry or whatever you're going to the bazaar for, meeting up with family, which again, it's important to connect with your family, go to the bazaars, whatever, but we've kind of detached ourselves from the sense of community that exists for us in Punjab. We don't go and we don't sit with the people of our band. We don't listen to their struggles. We don't listen to their stories. We don't take time out of our day, time out of our trips to go and really learn the history and the culture of the land we're on, and kind of resonate ourselves with the fact that, this land is struggling. And there's a lot of struggles that we never hear about sitting out here. And, all of us are out here in America, or Canada, UK, wherever you may be, right? So how important it is that when you go and visit Punjab, if you are lucky enough to go back, to listen to the people that are living in your band, to listen to your community and resonate with their struggles, and try to, ground yourself and remind yourself that, okay, these are the people that I come from, right? This is how they're struggling. This is how I can help them, and kind of just sit on it for a little bit. Something else that was really amazing in our fourth conference was we had an audience member reach out to us, and he said that he was super inspired by our past three conferences, and that he took time out of his day to write a poem about Napulian Napulange, specifically centered around the name. It was an amazing poem. Again, if you have the time, it is towards the last 30-40 minutes of our fourth conference. Please go check out the recording and listen to his poem. It was very moving, and it was very gratifying for me to know that our audience was being influenced positively by the conference that we were putting on, and seeing how inspired he was, that he went out of his way to create a poem about it. Something else that we talked about in the fourth conference was something that we can call like the brain drain, which is basically that opportunities are being taken out of Punjab. People of Punjab aren't given the chance to progress further, or it's been made harder for them to do. So a lot of us have migrated out to other countries looking for opportunities, which has taken so much knowledge out of Punjab. It's taken so many skills, so many people out of Punjab, and Punjab is kind of regressing rather than progressing, which was something else that we really talked about, that really stuck with me. We also, like Gurleen had mentioned, we focused this conference on the youth specifically. We wanted to talk about, okay, so we talked about all this stuff. We talked about all this history, all these instances, all the struggles that we've as a community have faced. But like, now what do we do with this information? A lot of times we talk about our problems and we never propose a solution. So we talked a lot about what the future looks like. I mean, we can't predict the future, but what we can do in present day to kind of work towards solving these issues. That was an amazing discussion, and a discussion that we have yet to continue, that hopefully we will be able to continue in future events. Um, Yeah, I think that's pretty much it about what we talked about in our four conferences. I'm sure we left out a lot of stuff that we couldn't, remember. So please go check out the recordings. They will all be made available to you in the description, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
So I think because the notes you guys did share for me to kind of get a gist of the conference, because I had heard of it but I didn't know like too many details about it. So like the notes that you guys get, there's obviously a lot more that we could go into and go into more depth in. But again, that would like I rather folks that wanted to learn more about these individual topics and these individual conferences to go check out the links, go check out the presentations for yourself instead of just hearing a quick overview of it from us and from our amazing speakers and guests today. So I rather, if you guys want, go to the description again. Just click the link and it will take you to a resource page, and then do your own learning, do your own journey, right? I think these podcasts are made to give a sense of direction to anybody that might be wanting a direction, right? And if you go from this episode and you just want to learn about whatever we talked about and that's it, and you want to keep moving, that's fine. That's more than happy, and that's one of the goals that I had for this podcast. We had for this podcast was just to give somebody something to talk about or something to think about. If one person takes away something to think about, that's more than enough for us. Um, but I want to again just say, I keep repeating myself, but I do really mean it. And just like a thank you of like both your guys' hard work, and also all the others that were on the team and helped. I think it's like from just hearing from it for like the past however long we've been recording for, listening to you guys just talk about it each day in conference and breaking it down, it's like this must have taken a lot of time, a lot of work for you out of your guys' personal lives to do this. And the fact that you guys did this, like again, at such like in high school years and like such a young age, is just like it's even more impressive and mind blowing. So definitely, I think this is something that was really needed and it's really helpful for our community. Um, I just want to ask, will this just be a one-time thing, or will you guys continue this in the future? Maybe switch it up a little bit, maybe not have four, but maybe a couple days, or however you guys, is there anything in the future planned?
We were just talking about this, but yes, we do want to continue Napoleon Napolange with the same name and like the same team. We've all talked about it before, but we want to continue something similar into our JMCs, along with like even alongside SHSS, because some of our other team organizers, they're still in SHSS and still continuing to do wonderful things. But we do want to continue this name, and we do want to have more conferences revolving around this idea and even more. Yeah.
Yeah. I think again, I keep going back to this, but like Gurleen, for you, again, I say this because me being from Antelope, right? And when you were a freshman, so you kind of saw like how we started out. Um, just to see like if you want to talk a little bit more, just a little bit about like switching gears a little bit, just to talk a little bit more about your guys' selves and your guys' selves. Um, Again, I just want to preference again, the link is in the description. So please click that, go do your own research, go enjoy it for yourself or learn for yourself. But to switch gears a little bit, I just want to talk about how your years, especially because I didn't know much what happened after I had left my senior year. So after we had started and did that 1 year, I didn't look back as much. I didn't keep up with it as much. So if you just wanted to talk about your journey with Antelope SHSS and how when you like first started getting into leadership positions there, how it was to like how you're leaving it, and what's like what you want to take, like what you've learned and what you're taking to like the JMC that you're going to, because ultimately that's one of the goals for Jakara and for us in general. I say us because everybody talks about like how we want to go from SHSS to JMC to still being around in missiles or volunteering or becoming staff. Like, so it's like a pipeline of like, so whatever you've learned at one stage of your Jakara career or your path, right, you want to take to the next. So if you just want to start off and just talk about a little bit about your journey, personal journey, about like how that all transpired and everything like that.
SHSS Antelope like always holds a special place in my heart because growing up, even throughout like elementary and middle school, there was never any Sikh clubs, never like a large group of Punjabi Sikh students coming together in one room and like deciding to do something for their own community. And for me, like my first year at SHSS was that like just like the first meeting, like you may not realize Paul how like important it was to have that small little foundation that you guys created. Like it meant so much to a lot of Punjabi students on the Antelope campus. So just always remember that, we're super thankful for that. And just like having that foundation was amazing because, we took the club from like a small group of students to, having like 30, 40 registered members at one point, which was my junior year. And just like all the officers, I feel like, the main advice I could give to anybody who is on SHSS board is like really connect with your officers. They're going to be there for you like throughout the whole school year. Whenever you're down, they're gonna have your back. They're gonna be there to like pick you up and let you know everything's gonna be okay. Because that's how it was with my officers. Like there would definitely be times where I would struggle and I would be overwhelmed with school, like AP exams, SAT, and whatnot. But my officers were always there for me. And I think that was the strong part about Antelope is like we all worked together as a team. There was always like nobody was above anyone. We were all on the same platform. We were all throwing out ideas, always making it work, trying new things. And even if those new things didn't work, we wouldn't let that bring us down. We would just keep pushing forward, trying new ideas, new events and whatnot. And definitely like relying on our community organizers a lot, like Harjeet, Mandeep, and Harkiran. They've been there for our club for so long, and like without them, I don't know where we'd be. Just their continuous support has helped SHSS so much. But yeah, definitely that was one of my best experiences of high school. That club literally changed my life.
No, I think that's honestly like, again, I've had discussions with Mandeep, who is our Sacramento community organizer for Jakara, but Harjeet and Harkiran, they're also a part of the Scuba, which is our Sacramento Yuba City region here that we have in the North Cal, right? So I've had numerous conversations with Mandeep because Mandeep wasn't there when we first started, right? He joined a little bit later. So like when he asked me about like how was it when we started, and like we were just talking a little bit, it was like kind of like I started opening up a little bit to like just be like, when we first started, like we had zero clue what we were doing. Like I'm not gonna lie, like we just had no idea. Everything was a mess. Everything was just like, let's just go through the motions this year and hopefully whoever comes after us like picks it up, right? That was like legit towards the end of the year. That was our plan. That became our plan of like, just let's just make it to the end of the year, and from there we'll just leave it to whoever comes next, right? It's a horrible plan because we're setting up like the next, like whoever came after us like with like next to nothing. But so it's just like, but that was like the plan towards the end. It was just like, because again, it was like our first year. We were all seniors, so not only was it our first year of the club, but it was our last year of high school. So it was like towards the end of that year, like all the seniors were basically like, yeah, I want to leave already. I want to be done with high school. So there was like commitment obviously dropped off with like, that's something that kind of like happens even in JMC to this time, especially, right? Because I joined, I think I've talked about a little bit about my journey, but I was at community college after I had graduated from Antelope High School in 2018. So I wasn't at Davis right away. So for 2 years I was like without a JMC. So for me, like those 2 years I just spent like still, I was always in contact with all of our community organizers. I volunteered and facilitated one time and twice at our Nishan at our high school conference, and then I also attended both Lalkar, which is our collegiate conference. So I was still around all the time. I would always help out wherever I could. But it was like very much like, so those 2 years was kind of just, I didn't know what was going on. But then last year when I was able to join or transfer to Davis, I was able to become, I was on the board for JMC Davis, and we were able to do a lot of amazing things. But it was just like, again, we were, as much as I was learning, everybody else was learning because of like COVID, and we were learning about Zoom and just how to do things. And it was just like, for us, we were just like, hey, we have to try it, right? If we don't try it, then we'll never be able to accomplish anything. That's how our podcast started. That's how our JMC is still growing to this day. again, if for those who are listening, JMC Davis, we are coming back and we're stronger than before. We'll be better than before, right? We have a lot of exciting things coming up for this year, but so please stay tuned, and who knows, we'll have a whole podcast with the whole entire board joining me one time, right, in the future here, maybe next month, maybe even a special episode just to let you guys know what we're up to, right? But so it's like for me to see back, right? When I was talking, I'll go back to my story, which I got sidetracked from. But like when I was talking to Mandeep about it, like it kind of got me a little bit emotional because I was just like, we started off this club with no end goal in sight, right? We just started this club to start it, honestly, right? Because Bolinder, she had come back to Jakara after some time after she was done with her schooling a little bit, and she was our Sacramento community organizer at the time, and she was basically like she just basically got into contact with a bunch of high schools in the area, and was trying to get us to all create SHSS clubs at all of our high schools, and we didn't know much about it. We didn't know what to make of it. I remember my first Nishan as a participant back in 2018. I was like meeting all these new faces, all these new people from all over the place, and I was like, I don't know who anybody is here. Like I felt like really like I was just like I feel a little bit. I was just like, oh, I'm here, I guess. But then it's just like that was like my first time seeing a bunch of people. Then I met the same people again in a little car, and it was just like a building, right? And that's just how it goes. Like you just have to keep building relationships. You just have to keep going at it. Don't be overly shy, right? That's my advice. If you do get into a position to meet new people, just open up with at least one person or two people. At least get to meet two new people at least, right? And just go from there. But for us, it's like for me to look back at like Antelope SSS is just like the things that you guys have done. And again, it's sort of amount of time, right? I talk about this like I've graduated like 7 years ago, right? But but I've only graduated 3 years ago in such a short time. Like the amount of like progress you guys have made from your freshman year to your senior year and graduating off, right? It just made me really happy and made me like very proud that even though we did next to nothing, we were able to leave with something. But also like you said, like it was the first like Punjabi Sikh like club that I saw that was like more focused on like helping the community instead of like a social club. It was more about like, hey, what can we do for our immediate community? What can we do for our Ityas? What can we do for um, the next generation to come? What can we do for the current generation that's here? Right. So it's like it was like a new club meaning to like just being Punjabi Sikh, right? And at Antelope, you can attest to this. There is a lot of Punjabi Sikh population, right? So like you said, like when you first joined or when you came to our first meeting, there's like 30-40 people there. Like so it's just like even though nobody knew what it was, like there people are still showing up to trying to just find out and trying to join, right? So again, I just wanted to say like how proud I and then like you got and then you Gurleen specifically like helping put on and organize and run this type of like conference. It just makes me even more proud to see just like the amount like the types of leaders that we have coming after us, and it really makes me really happy to just see that like Antelope is well represented, and then you guys are putting Antelope on the spot, right? um Even though Antelope High School itself tried to diminish its own reputation last year with COVID protocols, we ain't gonna start there, but I
We
saw.
had a whole like thing about that. We like combined with Jakara COVID team,
Mhm.
and we like had this conference about like why it's inappropriate, what we can do, and like I think we put together an email for everyone to send out to the school board. Like that was one of the big things we did over COVID,
Yeah.
SHS with like I think Biomed Club or something. We combined and we protested against it. So that was one of the good things we did.
Yeah, so for some people, I know a little bit because I also did send an email, right? Because I was just like, because I was like, we've tried so hard to like try to make Antelope into like some type of like a reputation for itself, and like these guys are just like they just tried to like it was trying to force it into like a bad situation, and it was just like nobody was prepared. Like it's one thing about being prepared and going into it than just trying to just force it, right? And it's just like, oh, we'll just see what happens type of situation. But I'm not gonna dive more into that because it got into like a lot of politics and stuff like that. But I did see that, and it was just amazing to see you guys, not only you guys selves doing something about it, but like teaming up with all the other other organizations there to do something about that, right? Amrit, I just want to let you talk a little bit about yourself and your SHSS experience, and then now going into JMC, like what you're excited for, and your thoughts of what's to come.
Yeah, so the Bay Area in general, our membership hasn't always been the strongest. So Silver Creek definitely had the same problem. You know, I believe that I was restarting SHSS on my campus. I think it was present during my senior year, but it kind of died after that. You know, nobody was willing to take on the leadership. And then my junior year, actually, it was Gurleen who forced me into it. She kind of went like, "Are you gonna do it or not?" And I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." But I'm so glad that I did it. I'm so glad that she forced me into
That's what we
it.
call a leader right there.
Yes,
Sorry.
definitely. Yeah, no. I remember on my 16th birthday party, she like yelled at me. She was like, "You have to do it."
But
And I
you
was
needed that push. You
like,
needed
I
it.
did.
I was like, you have
It's a
to do
friendly push, okay? It's a friendly push.
it.
Tough love.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am so glad that she did do it because even though on campus, it was not very active. About like a month after like our club actually getting its like footing going, we went virtual. So, you know, for a while there wasn't anything going on, but then it kind of hit me. It was like, okay, you know what? Like we're all virtual, so the bounds of kind of transportation and location are kind of lifted. So, I started organizing just in general with all of Bay Area, and I got to create um, something that I hope I can continue on into the San Jose State's JMC. It was called the listening circles, right? So once a month we would get together. We would either read a part of something or we would watch a couple videos. So we started February this year. We talked about Black women in history. We went over Angela Davis. We watched an interview of her when she came out of jail. It was her first public interview. It was very interesting. So many interesting discussions just arise from that. And then we talked about um, intersectionality. You know, we talked about the Kisan Morcha. We talked about how um, we kind of went a deep dive into the fact that um, it's not just the Indian government. There is a lot behind the Kisan Morcha. We specifically talked about, you know, the corporations. We talked about the corporations out here in America. We talked about the, you know, the billionaires out here who have a direct hand in what's going on in the Kisan Morcha, why they're pulling, you know, why they're taking our land away from us, why they're creating a capitalistic system over the agriculture of Punjab. We talked a lot about that. Hopefully I'll continue it. We only did about 4 months, but yeah, that was a very exciting part. And then of course, Napoleon and Napulange took up majority of my time. You know, we started November last month and we ended just last month. So it took, I mean, last year, November last year. So it was 9 months of straight organizing. Looking back, it didn't seem that long. Looking back, it didn't seem that long. It was just like second December hit. It was like, oh my God, first conference is in April, and now it's like August, and I'm just like, damn, I really spent 9 months just putting all my efforts into Napoleon.
It was so worth it though. Like
But
at the JMC retreat, people came up to us and they were like, dude, thank you so much for organizing something like this, because they put it on for their family as well and put it on their TV, and they were like, that really started a conversation in their own homes about 1984 and what happened. So honestly, that just made my heart so full, and I was so happy after hearing that.
yeah. But yeah, so unfortunately, I didn't get to organize a lot within my own campus, but I am excited for San Jose State and JMC. I'm excited that I'll actually get to be on campus and I'll get to organize. And you know, I'm excited for this year's theme and stuff. This in the retreat, we got to pick themes, and we went with, oh, I keep forgetting the name, but it's something to do with Sikh asylum and like the border and, you know, Sikh immigrants. And we'll get to talk about the school to prison pipeline, you know, the prison industrial complex. I am just So yeah, I could go on forever, but I'm going to end it at just like I'm very excited to start organizing, and I cannot wait to see the amazing things that all of the JMCs will be doing. So,
Yeah. I think so when you were just talking a little bit about like when you guys started planning and when you guys started like running things and stuff like that, it's like I kind of started around the same time. If you go look back, our first episode was in November. So it's like I started around like the same time you guys started with your guys' conference. So it's like we started around the same time and kind of, but it's like also like I don't think you should be discouraged in terms of like only had like you guys were only able to like organize like 4 of those like listening circles, because I think even doing 4 was like it's an amazing thing, right? Like for me to get to episode 10 for me is like an amazing feat. I don't know when this will stop. Maybe this might be our last episode. I don't know, right? I hope it's not our last episode because there's so many more things that I would want to talk about and want to get to. But it's just like you just don't know like what the service circumstances are going to be, right? And you never know that like what's in store tomorrow. So it's exciting times to look forward. Like I know us at Davis, we're really excited for this upcoming year. It's just more about like we had last year to kind of build our relationships, build a like working relationship with one another, and then from there we're just going to be able to continue from last year. I know like we were able to like last year we like I started off in like the beginning kind of said like a we had a little bit too many people, like too many cooks in one kitchen, right? That's what like the saying is, right? That we just have like too many people where you can't do anything. It was just very challenging for us to organize with so many people having to like have a say in things. And I know like that kind of sounds dictatorship ish, but like it's also like you also have to like keep in mind planning a meet like scheduling a meeting with 11 people is way harder than scheduling a meeting with 5. So it's like for us, like I know there's a lot of turnover and we're just very excited to get started with this school year. I know if you follow us on our JMC Instagram, you can see that like for like the better end of like last year school year we kind of fell off in terms of like activity and staying up, but I we still were posting podcast episodes, which is something that I will continue no matter what or best of my powers. With that, I just wanted to say again, if you are watching us live on you or watching us on YouTube, the video version, so hello again. Please bear in mind that we are using Zoom, and even though Zoom is amazing for everything that it has given us, it does have its faults, right? With like internet connections, with our cameras freezing up, right? I know we've had that problem a couple times, but it's not just this episode. It's been an ongoing thing for us. I know whoever has used Zoom, you know this, right? Um, but again, yeah, if you're watching us live, thank you, or on YouTube, our faces, thank you. Make sure you subscribe to keep growing the channel, keep growing our community and the sangat that we're making. Again, these podcasts are mainly for the guests to speak and give them a platform to speak, and then for the sangat to interact and take that conversation that we have the next step further, or take it to their friend groups, their households, right? The conversation never ends just within this hour or this however long this episode is. It's always going to continue afterwards. And please, I encourage you, take any of these things that you might have learned today and go talk about it with your parents, or go talk about it with your friends. But also check the description again. The link to episode 3 for a Kisan Morcha podcast would be down there, but also there would be the resource link for Napoli, the conference. So all their recordings for each day, and all their presentations, everything will be on that research page. So again, please go and check that out. If you are listening on Spotify and on Google and on Apple, again, I just want to say thank you again. Your guys' support really means the world to us and to me specifically. I see that our numbers are growing every single episode and every single month. So again, just thank you everybody who has been supporting and been sharing it with your friends. Share it, honestly, share this podcast with anybody you think that would like it, right? And we talked a little bit about if you never try it or you never show somebody something or anything like that, you'll never know, right? It's just always about trial and error type of thing. Maybe you share with somebody and they didn't like it. That's fine. But if whatever you share with somebody they're super interested, and who knows, they want to maybe come on for a podcast episode down the stretch, right? But again, I just want to say thank you again for everybody for the love and support that you guys show. With that, I am gonna close because I know we've been going on for a while now. But again, I just want to say thank you to both of you guys for joining. I think it's really awesome not only for you guys to come on and speak about what you guys did, but also what you guys did and what you guys are going to be doing here in the future is also going to be amazing. And I can't wait and can't be more proud and be happy that you guys are leading in your guys' spaces that you guys have. With that, if you guys have any last comments or anything you guys want to make before we head out.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having us and giving us a platform to speak on about this conference series. It definitely means a lot to be heard and have a voice. And then Amrit, if you want to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you again for inviting us on the show, and I also want to take this time to congratulate you on your success with the JMC Chronicles. Um, it's an amazing thing that you're doing, and I for one cannot wait to see it. I don't know if this is the correct word. We're gonna like see it,
Yeah.
blow up and stuff. But this is gonna do amazing things. So again, thank you for giving us a platform, and to all the other speakers that you've invited. Yeah.
No, I've said this from the beginning, and I'll say this again. The guests are who really make this podcast. I like more or less like I am being selfish sometimes with the topics I pick, the guests I pick, because I'm just sitting here listening to honestly like this is my hour of listening to a podcast for myself, and I'll just throw my own 2 cents into a conversation, right? But other than that, I'm just honestly sitting here and just learning alongside our listeners. But with that, again, I just want to say thank you to both you guys, and I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future. But with that, I would say Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.